Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for CSU's workshop on making roti and dal. My name is Neelam Sharma, and I am here on one end with my niece Scarlett, who is helping today, and on the other end is our dear friend Heather Fenney, and we are going to host this workshop for you today. Heather is going to do a longer intro later on today to CSU. And to the series of workshops that bring you this particular workshop today. But just to say a couple of words, everyone who ordered the recipe pack will have received the exact amounts of orange lentils and flour that we're going to be using today in the recipe. And you would also have received a little container of mustard seeds, garam masala, and turmeric. And I think you guys also luckily got some lovely organic tomatoes. So those are the ingredients we'll be using today, along with some other things that you may have in your home. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to hand the camera over to Scarlett. And we're going to start today. This pot has exactly 2 cups of orange lentils in it. And what I'm going to do right now is simply... There we go. Rinse these, and you can see that as you rinse them, you get foam coming up on them, and that's perfectly natural. Most lentils and pulses will have this kind of foam as you rinse them, and what you do is you just get your hands in there, you do that, you turn it off, you give them a moment to settle before you pour the water off, because if you don't do that, you will find that you're pouring off a lot of the lentils themselves as well. So there we are, and what you essentially do is you do that a few times. Yeah. I want to bring it back up to me. So you do that a few times until the water runs clear. You know, you will see that the water is a little cloudy. I don't know if you can see that there very well, yeah? But the water's a little cloudy, and so you just do that rinse off maybe 3-4 times until the water runs a little clear. And then if you have time, you can set the lentils aside to soak. Even just soaking them for 10-20 minutes makes a difference. You can also soak them for longer if you have that time. I always prefer to eat any kind of lentil, pulse, bean, grain, nuts, anything like that is a concentrated food. Essentially, it's a seed that we are eating. I always prefer to eat that after soaking it because it releases more of the nutrition. It also makes it easier for the body to digest. Okay, so once you've done that, then you're going to put enough water so that you've got about double, a little less than double water to lentils. Yeah? And then you're going to go ahead and you're going to put those on the stove for those to start heating up. And in the meantime, we are going to start making the dough for the roti. So what I'm going to do is kind of pour water as I mix, yeah, like this, and kind of mixing the dry flour with the wet stuff, right? So now I need to put it down because it's really hard to do it like this. But I just wanted to show you guys. And so you kind of mix it as you pour so that you don't pour in too much. Yeah. Anyone dough knows about this. Yeah. And so you just mix it in as you go. And I find that it usually takes about a cup, but again, it really depends on the exact flour you're using, you know. It really amazes me every time I do any kind of baking or dough that the flour you use can make such an incredible difference to the amount of water that you need, right? You see how it's coming together? It's kind of like this sticky sort of mess at the moment, yeah? And what you want to do is you want to make sure you don't pour in too much water in one go. You just keep on working it to bring it together, and then you pour in more water, because there's still flour left on the sides. So you want to incorporate all of that.
Yeah, you don't want it to be too hard. You want it to be nice and soft, but you want it to be firm. So you see now, yeah, you see how that looks? That's great, Heather, right? See, so like this, yeah? So that's how mine looks. And then what you're gonna do is spend 5 or 10 minutes kneading it, right? So in case there's anybody who has never kneaded, Scarlett, would you like to come and demonstrate what kneading is? She's an expert kneader, this one, by the way.
Use your knuckles as well, that's helpful. Just smush it around the bowl a bit.
Okay. Yeah? Yeah. All right. So everyone kind of sees that. So you've got this really lovely, it's nice and soft, but it's firm, and you just kind of use your hands to make sure that you gather every bit of dry flour or sticky flour from the edges. Yeah, you do all of that, and you do the kneading as Scarlett showed you, you know, with this a little bit of what we call elbow grease into it. You do that for about 10 minutes, but for a moment, I'm going to give that a little break, and I'm going to ask Scarlett to bring the laptop over to where the lentils are on the stove. So you see here, they are boiling, and with lentils or beans, anyone who's cooked lentils or beans, you know that when you first boil them, they always have this sort of, you know, white froth that comes up on the top, yes? And so the trick is, you know, this was something, it took me a few years when I first started cooking to learn this, because if you don't pay attention to it at this stage, it will definitely boil over and you'll have a stove to clean. But if you pay attention to it at this stage and you give it a stir, and you know, you keep it simmering, but not, you know, you saw how I turned it down, it was boiling vigorously and I turned it down. And then this is the point when it's boiling like this, where I will add my salt and I will add my turmeric. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to add the salt. And I've just got a very simple sea salt. And you know, with salt, I always say it's better to add less because you can always add more, but you can't take it out. Yep. And then what I'm about to do now is to add a teaspoon of turmeric. Yep. The color immediately changes. Yep. Of the dal. I want to turn it up a little bit because I don't want it boiling too heavily, but I do want it kind of simmering. And that was, there you go, that's like a full teaspoon now. Okay, so you see that? It's just started to, and what you can do is once you've done that for a little while and you've simmered it for a little while open, then you can actually cover it and let it simmer. But if you do that too early, it will definitely boil over. So we're going to leave the lentils cooking like that for a moment. Yep. So they're good. They're just doing their thing. They're cooking. They're happy. Okay. All right. And then we're going to come over here and I'm going to knead the flour for a few minutes. And so I'm going to turn it back over to you, Heather, to do the intro at this point.
Great. Hi, everybody. So thanks everyone who joined. Sorry if you came in a little late. There's a little bit of lag, but thank you so much for joining our first Garden Gateway virtual cooking class. It's really fun to be seeing all of you, a bunch of you in your kitchens, moving around, getting stuff done. That's super cool. I'm here in the VMP kitchen. Maybe you can see a little bit behind me. And like Neelam said, she's there with her niece Scarlett in their kitchen at home. So for folks that are new, Garden Gateway is a free home gardening, natural home gardening and healthy cooking class that CSU has offered with support from USC Good Neighbors and others for the last 10 years. These workshops typically take place in person at our Expo Mini Farm on the second Saturday of the month, September through June. And typically It's about a 3-hour class, and we spend half the time in the garden and half the time doing healthy cooking. We are reimagining ourselves, as so many of us are, so many of you are too. And so this is our first virtual cooking class. We did a garden Q&A a few weeks back, and we're going to be doing some gardening workshops, you know, online as well. So we've split the gardening and the cooking in half, because that'd be a long time, 3 hours to be on our Zoom. So what we're going to be doing today, and I'll let Neelam introduce the dish a bit more and talk about it, but we're doing the red lentil dal and the roti. And for folks who've been in the Village Marketplace Market and Soulful Cafe, we sell this dal there. It's one of our most popular soups, you know, kind of type dishes. And so we had a lot of folks asking about it since we closed, and so we wanted to highlight it here. Neelam also got a chance to share this recipe a few weeks back on as part of an event with Silk Road, called Silk Road, and I see Lena is on here, who pulled that together, women in food who were sharing recipes. And so we're glad to be doing that again here. So I'll let Neelam talk a little bit about the dal, and then for folks who maybe came in a little late, just to share, the only thing we've done so far is put the lentils on to cook, and we mixed the flour with water in order to make our dough.
Yep.
I would ask that everybody keep your view in the speaker view, not the gallery view. This will be sure that while we're doing the instruction that we're the largest image on your screen. And then as we go on towards the end, you know, we'll take off the mics. Folks will have a chance for questions and to share what you have there in your kitchen. We do have the chat open. So if something comes in, you have any questions or something comes up, I'm looking here, I have someone asking that we have a lot of new folks. What is Community Services Unlimited? So Community Services Unlimited is a nonprofit based in South Los Angeles that does a lot of work related to food and food access, but most importantly around building community self-sufficiency, around health and well-being. And so we have urban farms, we have a market, we have teen internships and classes and all kinds of stuff going on. And then the last thing I'll say before I pass it back to Neelam is about the stuff that's in the kit. So they were organic red lentils. Folks who got the kit got organic turmeric and black mustard seed, and also the garam masala that we mix and blend here in-house. And then they got the, as Neelam had mentioned, the Rouge de Bardou flour, which is from Gonzales Simas Farm, which is up in the top northeast corner of California. It's a new product that we're carrying as part of our newly launched California Baker's Pantry. So you can buy this and other single origin flours on there. So check out the website. There's more of a description of these different flours there. And we're partnering with Lena, who's on the call here, and the California Grain Campaign on that. So we're really excited to be carrying this great product. Okay, so I'll pass it back to Neelam. Tell us a bit about Daal history and stuff, and then get us going on our recipe.
Okay, great. And just before I talk about dal, I'm just going to show you again my, you know, atta. And atta is just the Punjabi word for flour, and it refers to the raw flour or the dough. So I've wetted my hand, and I'm just, you know, I've been kneading away at the dough while Heather's been introducing, and I'm just touching the top of the dough gently with a wet hand. Okay, and then I'm going to leave that there now until we're ready to use it. And what it does is, as it rests, the dough, as all dough does, as it rests, it improves. And just that little bit of wetness on it will stop the top from drying off. Yep, so that's what you do with that. And then I just want to show you, if you could grab the thingy again, please. I just want to show you the lentils again. You know, because a lot of cooking is about how things look. You know, as you're cooking them and stuff, a recipe is one thing, but you guys see how, you know, the lentils have completely changed, right? The colors change, they're no longer orange, they're yellow, and that isn't just because of the turmeric, it is also just the cooking process that changes the color of them. And you can see that they're kind of half cooked, right? But you see how when I do that, it's very obvious that the lentils are still very separate from the liquid. Yeah, and that's not what we want. We want a homogeneous dish here. Liquid and the lentils are kind of one thing, as as opposed to being so separate like that. So we're leaving those to cook. Yeah, so I'm just leaving those. I've turned them up a little bit, and now that they're no longer going to be prone to boiling over, I'm actually going to go ahead so that I can speed up the cooking, and I'm going to cover them, not fully, because they can still boil over, that they have this magic thing, they can do that, but I'm going to kind of cover them like that. So they're simmering, and you can see it's not a very slow simmer, it's a medium simmer, right? So they're actually cooking nicely, okay? And then I'm going to kind of cover them like that. Okay, perfect. So those are good. The roti dough is done, and so now, while I talk to you a little bit about dal, I am going to start preparing the ingredients for the tadka, right? So now dal is a dish from India that can be made from orange lentils. It can be made from any kind of lentils or pulses. It is a common name for all of those things, and it's essentially a soupy kind of bowl of yumminess made from any pulse or lentil. It can be very simple, where dal can be as simple as what you've just seen on the stove, fully cooked, with a little bit of a dollop of ghee or pickle or something dropped into it and eaten with. But very, very commonly, most dal, especially dal, yellow dal, orange lentil dal, has a tadka with it, right? So a tadka is what I'm about to make, which is, it is a blend of seasonings and herbs that is kind of cooked down. So this is an onion that I am going to, and I don't know if you guys can see the chopping board, so I'm going to ask my...
You can angle it down a little bit.
Again. So you saw that I peeled the onion, I simply cut it in half, and I'm not trying to be whatever, but I know some folks are new to cooking, so it's literally just bam, 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 like this is the easiest way to dice up an onion. It's like that, yeah? And then you just cut it across that way. And then you get this marvelous little fine dice without having to do tons of work. It's just very, very easy. So again, it's the half onion, flat side down. And
someone asked us, what's the formal name of the orange lentil?
Formal name of the orange lentil. Well, I know what it is in Punjabi. In Punjabi, we call it masrandi dal. But what it is in any other language, I don't know. So does anyone know that?
If anyone's got that, drop it in the chat.
Yes. I just know what we call it. All right, so there you have a nice pile of beautifully diced onions. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn on the heat under another little saucepan, and I'm going to put, and you can use olive oil for this. You can use ghee. You can use, what I'm about to use is coconut oil. You can use butter if you want. It's not my preference, but you can if you want to. I love the taste of coconut oil with this, and I also really love the taste of olive oil, right? So lentils have a natural kind of butteriness to them. So I find that people feel like you need to use butter in order to make them buttery, but you really don't. They have that naturally. So olive oil or coconut oil, any of those things, rapeseed oil, solid vegetable oil does the trick beautifully, and it's much healthier for you. So I am heating up the coconut oil, right? It is here, it's warming up, it's breaking down, heating up, and you can you smell the lentils cooking, Scarlett? Yeah. Yes, they smell wonderful. They're filling up the kitchen with their lovely buttery, earthy kind of smell. Now in the recipe I sent you guys, I had asked you to have black mustard seed, right? So, but because this is in real time, and this is, that was a save of the camera being, of the laptop being destroyed, but there we are. So I actually happen to not have any black mustard seed, but what you can also use instead of the black mustard seed is you can use whole jeera, which is, in English, is called cumin seed, yeah? So what you have to do is, one thing you have to make sure is that the oil is nice and hot. It's got to be hot before you do this, yeah? So I've just turned it up. I'm making sure it's like well heated, yeah? And so it's only when it's nice and hot that you then pop in your teaspoon of either black mustard seed or whole cumin seed, yeah? So I'm about to pop that in to the hot oil, yeah? And what will happen if the oil is hot enough is that the seeds that you put in it will immediately start to release their flavor and their fragrance. Now, in the case of the cumin, it will just simply kind of sizzle and release its flavor and its fragrance. With the mustard seeds will actually pop, yeah? They literally, as you put them in hot oil, they pop. And so what I usually like to do is have a lid for the saucepan on hand. Otherwise, you get mustard seeds all over your kitchen popping, yeah? But if you put a quick lid on it, then you keep everything inside the pot. So you see here, if Scarlett turns the camera onto the pot there, you see how that is the cumin seed releasing its flavor, yeah? So I'm hoping that somebody is using black mustard and can tell us about it when we all check in later. But, you know, once the seed has released its, one of the biggest mistakes folks that are new to Indian cooking make is that they use these ingredients and they don't let them cook in the oil. So if you just add it and it doesn't actually heat up enough, it doesn't release its flavor. And actually for a lot of the herbs and spices we're using, they're actually Ayurvedic herbs, right? Ayurveda is an ancient form of medicine from India. And oftentimes to actually get the benefit of those herbs, you have to use a little heat to release that benefit, okay? But anyway, so the jeera is it's fragrant, it's lovely. And so now I'm about to add my onion, and you can see how immediately it's sizzling, it's nice and hot, yeah? And it's right away going straight into a nice simmer there and cooking, yeah? All right, so.
Neelam, somebody had asked about yellow mustard seed being a substitute for black mustard seed.
It doesn't do the same thing. I have to tell you, yeah, I've had a couple of people say that to me. And I have to tell you that even though I'm using jeera now, it is not my preference. My preference is mustard seed. There is an incredibly, I mean, the jeera is good too, don't get me wrong. It will also give it a nice flavor. But the black mustard seed really, really is incredible in terms of how it flavors the food. It's also, both of these things are also an ingredient in our garam masala and are also really good for your stomach and for your digestion. So you can see there, it's nicely simmering away. Yeah. And while we're here, let's have a look and see how the dal is doing. So you see that? You see how now, when I pick that up, it's much less a separate kind of thing. You can see that it's not as watery, the water that's coming down, as it was before, yeah?
Neelam, I just want to show, someone was asking, they're trying to add it, which thing in their kit was the black mustard seed. So I just want to show it. They're trying to move along.
Yeah, no, please
So if you got a kit, there were 3 little cups, and the little black seeds are the black mustard seed. All
right, so while the onions are cooking and the lentils are cooking, we're going to come over here and finish using our, so you know, in the same way that for French cooking, the triumvirate of flavors are, what are they? I know you know that. What are the 3 things for French cooking? Basically, it's onion, celery, and carrot are the 3 things that form the basic flavors in French cooking, yeah? So for Indian cooking, it's onion, ginger, and garlic are your 3 magic kind of things that you use, yeah? So this is a piece of ginger. I have peeled it very thinly because most of the nutrients are right under the skin. So in fact, if you can scrape it, it's even better to do it that way, right? But you know, you can definitely also peel it very thinly. I have a very sharp knife here that I've definitely cut myself with a couple of times. This is a new knife. And then, you know, again, you want to do the same thing. You put the flat side down. It's really not that difficult. You put the flat side down. You slice it lengthwise. Yeah, just be very careful if you have a sharp knife. You slice it lengthwise. And then what you can do is put some little cuts along it this way. Yeah, you guys see that? So you slice that way. You slice into it this way. Can you all see that, Heather?
Yeah, we can see it well. Thank you.
Great. And then you cut it along it this way. And look at that. That's a really fine dice you've got. And it's very, very straightforward, not at all complicated. Yeah, just mind your fingers if you have a super sharp knife like I do. All right, so look at that. Very, very nice, right? Very, very, very easily done. And my niece is telling me the onions are burning, so I'm going to turn those down a little bit. They're not quite burning, but they're quite brown. So you can come and have a look. Actually how you want them. You want them browning before you add your ginger. So once they're browning, I've turned them down a little bit now, and now I'm adding the ginger, right? And you want the ginger to become fragrant in that. And I've turned the heat down now to sort of not low, but fairly low, you know, just above low, medium. The heat is there on those now. And so then now I'm going to do the same thing with the garlic, right? So Heather has a very fancy way of chopping up garlic. I don't have that such fancy way. I literally peel it, and I'm going to do the same thing with it that I do with the ginger. Heather, do you have garlic there? Do you want to show folks the way you do your garlic?
Well, yeah, I don't know if, let's see if folks can see. There's a little bit of
see.
Yeah, so here is what I like to do. I just take it. I like to use this this knife. It's kind of my favorite knife. And I'll just lay it on the counter on a flat side and give it a crack. Is how I do it. And then you have this kind of crumbled up little thing here, but then the skin comes off real easy. And then like Neelam, I'll just come in with a knife. This is kind of a big one to be doing this, and nip off the little stem bit. And then in this case, I've got like a little brown, so I'll nip that away. And then I've got my garlic, nice there. And let's see, yeah.
Great.
And yeah, and then I just think Neelam's always more cautious about her slicing her garlic. And I just kind of go rough on it and just repile it and keep going and repile it and keep going, scrape it off my knife and just keep going and going and going.
Okay, so if you want to put the camera back on here, Scarlett. So I'm doing the same thing with the garlic that I did with the ginger. You know, see that? Just doing a really nice fine dice on it like that. You know, and if you don't like sort of garlic on your hands, you can easily wear some kitchen gloves, you know, and say if you don't want it on your hands. I'm quite happy with garlic on my hands. I'm a huge garlic fan, as anybody who knows me knows. Yes, you just heard, maybe didn't hear my niece there in the background going, yep, we know. Yeah, so that's me. So while I finish,
share a little tip, Neelam, while you're slicing.
Yes,
when I'm cooking a meal like this, and we know we're going to be skinning things like peeling the ginger, peeling the onions, the garlic. There's going to be lots of little trashy bits. We just like to put a little bowl on the side of the counter, and you can be collecting all your scraps. If you compost, then it's ready to just dump into the compost. And if you don't, at least it keeps you from having to continue to run to the wastebasket, and you've got a nice, neat place to discard anything you're not using.
You guys see that?
Yeah. Is that it? Yeah. That's our little scrap plates. Put everything on.
You guys hear that?
Yep.
Did you hear Scarlett? Yep. Okay, so that's our little, there. Okay, and then The garlic is, look at that, see, it's a nice pile of very finely diced garlic. And there we are. And so what I'm going to do now is, Scarlett is going to bring the camera over again to the stove. You guys can see, you can't smell it, but I can actually smell the ginger. Do you smell the ginger, Scarlett?
I did.
Yeah, you can smell the ginger. It's all fragrant. So now we're going to add the garlic into that. Yeah. Now that all that is in there, we're going to turn it up a little bit again to a good medium heat so that it starts to cook again a little faster. And this is the point where if you were adding chilies or jalapeno or some kind of chili, this is when you would chop it up and add it. Unfortunately, these days, I can no longer add chili because there are people of this household that I'm bubbled with who don't eat any kind of chili. So you see that big thumb there from my niece. So therefore, I cannot add chili at the moment. But this is where I would normally add a chopped up, you know, green chili or cayenne pepper or a jalapeno or whatever is your kind of heat, you know, that you prefer. This is the point where I would add that if I was going to add it. So as that comes up to temperature and does its thing, the last thing now that we are going to need for the tadka in terms of fresh ingredients is tomato. So I have here this beautiful farm grown, this came with a box that I order, plum tomato. You guys got some lovely tomatoes, those who got the kit. Normally I would use 2, but again, because this is real time and we have some, this is fine. You know, we just have this one big one left. It's a nice big plum tomato. So I am going to, again, lengthwise cut this one, cut it into strips there. Can you guys see that? Huh? See
yeah,
that's tomato. Yeah, we have tomato monsters in the house. My niece is asking me, can I have a piece? This is why we only have 1 tomato left. All right, so, so I am going to dice that up finely. Like I said in the instructions, if you have a blender, you can easily just cut the little core out of your tomatoes and chuck them in the blender and blend them up. You don't want them to be like soup. You just want them to be a little roughly mashed. You see like this here, just nice and roughly mashed there is good.
I ran mine through the blender, Neelam. I was just holding
you ran yours through the blender, that's great.
You got to be careful because it does go quick.
Yes, it goes very quickly. And the thing is also, you know, with adding the tomato, what you're adding is really acidity, right, to the dal, because that's what you see. She just stole a bit of tomato. Did you guys see that? Did we catch her on camera? She just stole a bit. I don't even know how she did that. Anyway, so you can really smell the garlic right now. So can you stop eating the tomato and bring the camera out, please? So there you can see, you see how the mixture is all, it's not burnt, but it's all nice and browned, yeah? And if you actually hold up, if I can get this kind of really close, you can see that every ingredient so far is nice, is browned, yes? The ginger, the onions, the garlic, they're all browned, yep? And that's what you want. So the second biggest mistake people make in Indian cooking is they rush this part, and you can't rush it. You can't, if you underdo this, it just doesn't taste right. You want each thing individually to be toasted, and you also don't want to throw it all in together, right? And there's a reason you don't want to throw it all in together. And that reason is because when you do each ingredient separately, what you're doing is you're creating layer after layer of flavor, right? That is literally, it's literally what the French call layering, right? Whereas if you throw it all in together, I've had so many friends say to me, but I did what you told me and it just didn't taste the same. And I'll ask them, well, tell me exactly what you did. And one of the things they do is they chuck everything in together and it just does not produce the same flavor, right? So there, you want it all really nicely, you want it nicely browned. See how I'm still cooking it a little bit. And while it does that, I'm going to show you once again what the dal looks like. See now, see that now? See how that's looking really, really different. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Yes, perfect.
Great.
Okay,
Yes.
You see that? It's really, I mean, it really looks more now, right? Like the liquid and the lentils are one thing as opposed to being separate. And it still has a little way to go, but it's definitely getting there. Yeah. So just while it's there, let me show you. So you see, this is the turta. So you guys see how it's not burnt, yeah? But each piece is really nicely browned, yeah? There's very few super white bits in there, yeah? And that's what's gonna give it that really yummy, toasty flavor where you taste the ginger and you taste the garlic, but it doesn't taste like something separate and suspended, right? That's what's incredibly important in this, yeah? Okay, so once it's like that, I'm gonna put it back on the heat. Sorry, Scarlett, I have to ask you again to hold the camera. And then I've got my nice tomatoes, the one my niece has left and not eaten. And I am going to add those into that mixture. Okay, and what I've begun to say earlier was that when you add tomatoes, what you're essentially adding is acidity, right? Because you have the creaminess of the lentils and you have the different flavors, the earthiness of the onions and, you know, the spiciness of the garlic and the ginger. And what the tomatoes add is an acidity that really kind of brings out all the flavors really differently. So how much tomato you want to use is really a matter of personal preference, just like with chili, right? Now, I like a lot of tomatoes. So normally, like I said, I would have 2, you know, but since we only have 1 now, thank you, Scarlett. No, I know, I'm just teasing you. You know, but it's still gonna taste yummy, yeah? And then there are many people who I know, you know, insane people, I have to say, but many people who I know who don't use tomato at all. So it's really a question of personal preference. And then many folks who don't use tomato, they'll actually squeeze a bit of lemon into the bowl of dal at the end when it's all made. But what you want to do now with this is you really want the tomatoes to fully cook in. Okay, so you know, so you can see, right? And so the idea of blending them is if you blend them, they just cook in a little faster, yeah? But here's another trick too. If you haven't blended them and you've chopped them like me, if you turn up the heat a little bit and you add a little hot water from your kettle, that will help them cook down a lot faster. And you see those beautiful colors in there. You guys see that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so we're going to leave. Yeah. So we're going to leave that to cook down a little bit, and I'm going to show you once again the dal. See, look at that. Yeah, that's really coming along nicely. And you see how once it gets like this, you don't have to worry about it boiling over at all. You can fully cover it. Okay. And I'm going to just leave this to cook a little bit, cook down. Yeah, do you want me to grab it for a minute? Yeah, sure. Okay. And you can stir. Why don't you stir? So we're going to change roles for a moment. There we are. See, and it's just on high heat. You have to set it down here. I'll move. Can you guys see it, Heather?
We can, yeah.
Okay,
good.
Turn it up
It kind of came down.
There we are. Okay, and just let it. Oh, and it smells lovely.
I see a lot of pots being stirred.
Nice.
Yeah, it looks good.
See, and it doesn't take too long. You see that? Okay, now once it gets to how it looks there right now, then you can turn it down just a wee touch, yeah? Ingredient you want to add is, you want to add some garam masala. So here we have our CSU garam masala. Can you tell me that?
And this is what it looks like for folks who got it in the meal kit. It's the only one, you know, it's the darker powder.
Yeah. So then you want to add, you know, and again, things like this, you know, it's a question of your taste, right? So I'm going to do 2 teaspoons. Yeah. But, you know, you may want to start off with 1 and see how you feel. You know, but you see how that changes the color there of the mixture? Yeah.
see that?
Good. And Neelam, what does garam masala mean? What's in garam masala?
So garam masala, what garam masala means is, it means garam, the word garam means hot, yeah? And masala simply means a blend of stuff, right? So garam masala means a hot blend of spices. That's what garam masala means. And what gives it its heat isn't actually chile, right, necessarily. Now, it does have a little cayenne pepper in it, a very small amount, not a lot. But what gives it the heat is things like cloves, things like, you know, the cumin and the coriander and all these other spices that kind of actually give it a really nice herby kind of heat to that blend. It's also incredibly good for your digestion. It's got all kinds of things in it that are used in Ayurvedic medicine. You know, it's really, really good for you. So that's what it has fennel in it. It has a whole bunch of stuff. Some of the things I can't remember the English names for without looking at it. So you see now how the color of that mixture has completely changed, right? And this is how you want it to look. So the other big mistake folks make is they don't allow this to cook in enough together. It has to, again, it's almost like you're making a paste is what you're doing, yeah? So that's ready now. The dal is ready now. You can see how when I stir it, yeah, and when I do the test there, you see how that's not watery in the same way as it was at all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to get the lentils before they get completely mushy, but so you know, so they're still slightly separate, but they're really well blended in, and the liquid is no longer watery. Yeah. Okay. And then you want to go ahead and add the tadka. We're just going to mix the tadka into the dal, and you're going to see how it changes the color once we mix it in like that. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a turn holding the camera, and I'm going to let Charlotte finish putting the rest of it in there and mixing it in. Yay! And there we are. And that is the dal is ready. Okay, and at this point, you can taste it if you want to add more salt, if you want to add more chile, you know, yeah, it's done, it's ready. And so we're going to set that aside. And what we're going to do is get our pan ready to make the rotis with. And that's the last thing we're going to do. So as I said on the instructions, you know, what we use typically in India is something called a tawa, which is a flat cast iron, you know, it's basically a frying pan without the sides, right? But it's flat and it's cast iron. Now, because I'm here at my brother's, they don't have one and I don't have mine here with me. So I'm going to be using a flat frying pan like many of you might be doing, yeah? So you'll see that it's totally doable. So it's just a wide, you just need it to be fairly wide.
So this is our spice order.
Yeah. It's a very traditional Indian, it's called a masala thali. It's one that you have all these little compartments and you have all your different spices and herbs and stuff in it. So I just thought that'd be a nice thing for you guys to see. So we're gonna cover that up, sorry. So we have our dough from earlier. So then now, so what I usually do is, now you can get a separate plate for it, right? Or a separate little container, you know, something, a little box or something, to put a little dry flour in, right? But what I do, because I'm lazy, is I just, the bowl that I did my dough in, I just drop a little dry flour onto the side of that bowl. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to break off a piece of that dough, like I've mentioned in the thing, that's about the size of a plum. Can you guys see that? Yeah? I'm going to break that off, yeah? And then using my palms, I'm going to roll it into a nice little ball like that.
and then flatten it between my fingers and my hands.
Neelam,
Yeah.
someone asked about their dough still being kind of sticky.
Okay, don't let that be a problem. If the dough is still sticky, just add some more dry flour and give it a good knead. Yeah? And then just set it aside for a couple more minutes. It'll be fine. I mean, here's the thing. This is stuff that people have been doing for centuries. It's really, you know, whatever you make is going to be lovely and edible, you know? If the dough is too sticky, add a little bit of flour. That's it, you know? If the dough feels too hard, add a little bit of water and give it another knead, yeah? But basically, just to show you guys, again, you're breaking off a piece and you kind of do this action here with your fingers, like that.
Can you do that a little slower, Neelam, right in front of the camera?
All right, I'll do it here. So I'm breaking off a piece like that. Yeah, I'm using the dry, the dry flour so that my fingers don't get too wet, and I'm kind of doing this like that.
You're kind of turning the edges inside itself? Is that how you're...
I'm turning the ends of it like that, and then into the middle. And if it gets too sticky, just dip it in the dry flour. That's why you have it handy. Turning the ends of it like that. Can you guys see that?
That's a great angle right there. If you can just go real slow.
Okay, I'm gonna go slow motion. You guys see that?
Yeah, I got some messages.
And then once you've kind of done that, then you do this between your palms. And you get this perfect. Now, you know, I will just say, I've been doing this for a very, very long time. So if you can't do it, don't be like, oh my God, it looks so easy, I can't do it. Just keep practicing, it will come. And then once you've got that, then you kind of dip it in the dry flour again, and you kind of hold it between your hands like this, and you kind of go like that.
That's perfect. There you go.
Do you guys see that? Oh, sorry, is my arm in the way? Sorry. How's that? Thank you, Scarlett. This is why you need a lovely, beautiful assistant like my niece to be helping you on things like this. So here's my third one. So again, I've got the little round, and then I'm just kind of doing this.
And what's the final size you're trying to get to, Neelam?
No, just not very big. Just here. Do you want to hold one up? So it's a little bigger than my palm.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay. And then when you've got a few of those, and our pan is already on the heat, on a low heat, and now I'm going to ask Scarlett to turn the heat under the pan up a little bit. Yeah?
And it's a dry pan? You didn't put anything in it?
Dry pan. You don't use, there's no fat, there's no grease in the use of this, there's no salt, there's no sugar, nothing. It's just flour and water. Yeah? And so you just put it a little bit on the dry flour. I have that there. I've got a little of the dry flour on the surface. You guys see that? And then I'm using this rolling pin, and I'm just rolling it out. Yeah. And I'm taking the dry flour with me as I go. Yeah. And if you need more dry flour, you can just sprinkle some on. Or if you have it in a plate or a bowl, you can just go ahead and do that with it. You guys see that?
How thick is the final product you're trying to get to?
Well, so how big the final product is, it's not so much how big it is, it's more a question of how thin it is. Yeah? Because it depends on how big the thing that we've made here is called a pera. It's the thing that you use to make the roti with, right? It's called a pera. And I said that in my recipe, you guys will see it. And it's also, again, this is the kind of thing that varies with every household, right? So my mother has a very funny story that when she first got married, she used to make really, really cute little dinky rotis like the one I've made here today. It's a little bit small, on the small side, right? And then she said that, and it's a big joke in India that that's what every new bride does, right? But then once you've cooked dinners a few times for a big family, then your rotis get bigger and they get bigger and they get bigger. So you're making less of them and they're heavier. So, so you've got less work, right? Now these days, I would say that that's not just about the women, it's also about the men. Men should be learning this too. But that's the big joke in India, right? So I don't know if you guys can see, if I hold it up, can you kind of see how thin it is? It's millimeters. Okay. So, you know, so once you've got that, so you don't want it too thin, you know, but you don't want it too thick either. And again, though, everybody's roti is different. You know, some people have very small, dinky ones. Some people have big ones. Some people have thinner ones. Some people have thick ones. It's all a question of, you know, taste and preference and all the rest of it. I like mine around this size and around this kind of thickness. Okay, so once the pan is heated, you want it to be nice and hot but not burning, yeah? So then what you do is, you do that with the roti in your hands, so that way you get off any excess dry flour, and it's also a way to slightly make it bigger once you've rolled it out, yeah? And so then what I'm going to do is slap it onto the pan. And you'll see if the pan is the right heat, you can see it very quickly. Can you see how, can you guys see the color changing?
A little bit, yeah.
It begins to go translucent, yes? So when the whole first side is translucent like that, then you turn it over, yeah? So you see how as it cooks, the color changes, the edges kind of lift up off the pan. And I mean, people who've made tortillas, this should be a dawdle for you. You know, it's actually a very similar kind of thing, except this is, you know, there's no fat in this, which I think is the difference with tortillas, right? Is that the difference? I think so. I've actually never made fresh tortillas myself. So you guys see that is the second side that's down, yeah? And you see how you start to see these little bubbles? That's when you know it's time to turn it again. And you see that? You see how that just is literally, remember what I said about puffing, right? So you just gently, you gently use a cloth. Now, if I had an open flame, if this was a gas stove, what I would then do is I would move the pan out of the way and I would just put the whole thing on the open flame. And you could use a pair of tongs to do that with. But since I don't have one, then you very gently coax it, right, with the cloth to finish cooking and to puffing. It's not going to be quite as good as it would be if you actually had an open flame. It's never going to be quite the same, but it's good enough, you know. You guys see that?
Neelam, there was a question about the heat level for the bread.
Yeah, so it's I would say it's medium high. So you see here, this is full. The full is 9 on this, and I've got it on 7.5. So you want it not to burn, but you want it high enough to where it actually, you know, it needs to have a fairly high temperature in order for the puff to happen, yeah? And usually you don't get a full puff on the first roti. You know, it's kind of like when you make pancakes, the first one is not the best one. Yeah, but you see how it is nevertheless, you can see it is actually puffing up there. Yeah, and that's it, that's done.
And Neelam, how can you explain the towel? Are you pushing down the puff?
So I am very gently, kind of the bit that's puffing, I'm kind of pressing on that to extend the air into the rest of it. And then sometimes I'm pressing on the bit that isn't puffed to make that bit. So there you go. That one there is ready. Yeah? Should we do another one together?
Yeah, let's do.
Let's do another one together. Okay, so again, I'm taking my pera, dipping it in a little bit of the dry flour. Yep, using my rolling pin, getting it nice and round and thin. And again, you know, if you're new to this and you're not getting it nice and round, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. It's a big joke, you know, in our families that when you first make roti, it's, you know, what country's map did you make with your first roti? You know, like that's kind of a big joke, right? When you're growing up and you're first learning how to make this. So the circle doesn't really matter so much. What's more important is getting the thickness and the thinness of it accurate, right? See, and if you're not confident about the slapping it between your hands, then don't worry about that, right? But because it's something I can do, so what I will do is get it to about this size, and then I will do this, and that will get it for me to the full size that I want, right? And then I'm going slap like that. Okay, so you see that turn translucent? I'm turning it, and you find that the more you make, the faster it gets. Again, it's kind of like pancakes, you know? The first one takes time, then the thing's fully heated up, and then it just moves faster and faster. That's kind of how it goes.
Let's.
Right, so you see that?
So I see, so you just push down on the bubble to help spread the air into other
Help
parts.
spread the air. But like I said, you know, if I had an open flame, I would just literally put it on the open flame and it would just go, you know, like that. It's much, much easier. Okay, so how does that, everyone feel okay about that? So there you have it. And so, you know, your dal, traditionally, we cut up the cilantro, wash and cut up the cilantro really small, and you'd sprinkle that right on the top right before you serve it. And then and if you want to, you can grease the chapati. You know, so a roti is called, also known as a chapati, or what my dad grew up calling it is a fulka. Fulka means something that expands. Full, it's kind of like fills up with air. So that's what a fulka, that's where that word comes from. So you can, yeah. So you can actually put a little butter on the top, or a little coconut oil, or a little oil on the top, you know, whatever you want to. Or you can have it plain. You know, I actually quite like to have mine plain with the dal. I don't necessarily like grease on mine. Yeah, and so I saw a comment from that oil is not a deal breaker. So, but this is traditionally what roti, or, you know, sada roti, as they call it in Trinidad, or roti in India, pulka, chapati, that's what this is. But this dough is also the basic dough that you would use if you wanted to make paratha or puri. So, and then we'll do those in another workshop. We'll kind of build on this, but this is the basic dough you would use to make those things. And then those are fried breads that are made with the same unleavened, they're unleavened breads made with the same dough.
Thank you so much for joining our first Garden Gateway virtual cooking class.